banking system, unfortunately, this is the truth, it's insolvent. And it's insolvent because it did all this fractional reserve banking. Now it has no reserves. Like, that's what I kind of said. So we're down to just kind of like, magic money printing type stuff. And when that whole system goes down, then just everything goes down. And that's no way to run a country or to run a currency. And hopefully, when this does happen, the folks out there like myself that know where we need to go can kind of help out and tell folks, how we got screwed. And we got screwed by our government. Make no mistake about it. The FDIC, Shayla Bair, the chairwoman of the FDIC, Ben Bernanke, they're responsible for what's occurring. And you know what? To some degree, they're just doing their jobs. Like, FDIC has this, this charter that they've had in place to go out and do this stuff. And Sheila, she's trying to avoid bank runs and that type of thing. And I can understand what she's doing. Even Ben Bernanke, I can understand what he's doing. He's in charge of a central bank. What's the purpose of the central bank? It's to basically secretly confiscate people's wealth with inflation and keep it all tied together. He's actually doing his job. But guess who are the folks that are actually responsible for our nation's purse strings? And these are the people who, when I said heads should roll, I don't mean actually literally, but we might want to consider that. But it's U.S. Congress. What U.S. Congress does is they just delegate responsibility off to the FDIC or the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, or any of these government agencies. They just keep dealing off their responsibilities. And in reality, that's what Hayek wrote about, F.A. Hayek wrote about in The Road to Serfdom. You've got all these groups, and you can't have central planning occur, so you got to delegate. So they give control to the Fed or they give control to the FDIC, and it all needs to end. It all needs to end, and unfortunately, like, the road that they're taking us down is one of collapse. And people need to realize that, and people need to realize that they have to be responsible. They have to be their own, basically, they have to be their own personal banker and decide for themselves, with what we said here today about gold and silver, if it makes any type of sense whatsoever, they can go check into it. I view it as insurance as well against everything that's kind of going on, in a way to preserve your purchasing power. But what it really comes down to is it's not just an inflation hedge. It's not just protecting your purchasing power. It's actually protection from the failures of your own government. And unfortunately, with all these stimulus plans and bailouts, it's just all kind of like a bunch of rush action to buy time. They're living from week to week. And, I really hope things don't go this badly, but they probably will.
At the post office, which is indexed to the CPI as well, I don't see the price of a postage stamp going down anytime soon, even though it should be adjusted down as well to reflect the negative CPI that our government is reporting, which is completely false, but that's what it's all indexed to.
Well, if you look at the post office balance sheet, I think they're on track to lose about $7 billion this year. And, this is just another thing, like when we talk about socialized medicine and all those things. When governments run companies, they don't know how to operate.
They don't run companies.
And in some ways it's explainable, because in a socialized economy where you do have controlled monopoly, like this case is, delivery of letters, when you do, and this would be the same thing that would happen if we had socialized medicine in the U.S. today. When you have something take over a market completely, what it ends up destroying is it ends up destroying the price signals. And with that, when those are destroyed, then you have really no idea whether you should be using a certain good for something, or would it be better served somewhere else, or would this doctor be better off helping somebody else over here? You have no idea. So that's what a market does.
Profit and loss mechanism.
Right. And I guess there's one other thing, like you mentioned Carl Denninger's market ticket earlier, but I like to mention also, like my website is actually run by a small group out of New Hampshire called Raging Debate, and they're at ragingdebate.com, and what they've actually done for me is... Right. They've built the website that has all the forum capabilities and discussion capabilities, because my website, townforcongress.com, actually has in it a lot of places where people can basically just, they have a login and they can talk. But another great economic site for people to go to is also run and built by Raging Debate, which is called theburningplatform.com, which is just all one word, theburningplatform.com. And at that website, there's an economist, Jim Quinn, who has some really, really great insight into all types of economic news, like him, Carl Denninger. There's actually, there's a bunch of others. There's Miss Shedlock.
Yeah, there's MissShedlock.com.
Goldseek.com. There's a bunch of websites where jsmindset.com, while I'm at it,
where people can kind of get University.
There's a lot of sites where people can get this information, but people just need to decide is, inaction in itself is also a decision. And again, I'm not a financial advisor or that type of thing, but people need to take a look at this pretty seriously, because we have a lot at stake. We have our children's lives at stake. We have, in some ways, we have, our entire livelihoods at stake. I mean,
well, and my whole thing is, if you were being ripped off, you'd want to know about it. Well, the reality is you're being ripped off, so get out there and learn.
This environment, and kind of, if I was doing this to you, you'd probably be a little bit more concerned. But what we have in this place doing the damage is the government, and a lot of people even today, they still have a trust for government, and they, to some degree, there's the factions of people in the U.S. that want the government to take care of them from their cradle to their grave, and it's just not going to. It's not that it's just not going to work. I mean,
it's not sustainable.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It has never worked, and it'll just fail.
So, and there's history. There's much proof throughout history. Many examples all throughout history. These things can be done for a while, but they're not sustainable.
Well,
eventually, they must end, and eventually somebody pays for it.
We're looking at
and
the
USSR.
USSR.
People that pay for it usually pay heavy. Yeah, USSR is a great.
I mean, that's the type of thing that we're looking at failing under. So, but it's kind of funny. Like I was talking about this with someone yesterday at the rally in Lancaster, and government's kind of a funny thing, because it's like, I mean, think about yourself. Think about your relationship with your spouse. Maybe you have kids, or your friends, or your family, with your colleagues, and my point is, things, you get along and everything, but, a lot of times you have friction with people, and sometimes the friction can be kind of severe. But somehow people have got it in their minds that, when they go into the voting booth and they know these guys and they pull a lever for, Joe so-and-so, that he'll work together with all these other folks in government, and it'll all be like, one big happy story, and they'll take care of everyone. And to some degree, that's correct. Like, people have busy lives. They don't need government to be causing all these freaking problems for them. Well, they just kind of want these officials to kind of take care of things. But what's developed over time is a very, I would even call it a corrupt atmosphere with this, this two-headed one-party system. I mean, to me, like the choice between the Democrats and Republicans is really not much of a choice whatsoever.
They're pretty much the exact same. You're down to 1 minute here.
Okay.
I'll let you, whatever you feel like saying right here, last minute, promote your site and whatnot, and, feel free. If we get down to 30 seconds, I'll cut you off. You've got about a minute and a half, though.
Okay. Well, thanks again for having me on the show, and I hope Gary's feeling better. Maybe we can do another show sometime when he is. But I guess, the last thing for anyone out there that's listening, and check out the website, townforcongress.com, TOWNE. It's all about liberty, protecting the Constitution. We haven't mentioned that too much in our conversation today. It's a bit financial, but very much into the Constitution. What I point out to people is if the Constitution isn't the contract and isn't the limit on government, then what is? And there's really no good answer to that. And I guess I would add to that is, the campaign that I'm running, it's against the machine. It's against the Democrats and Republicans. It's not very well funded whatsoever. So if you have, $10, $20, whatever, if you go to townforcongress.com, there is a way to contribute to the campaign, so I can basically just spread the message that I have in his district and win the seat back for the people.
Right on. Well,